Good morning, Metalheads Internet. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown! And welcome to the first Albums I Missed video of 2020, a monthly segment in which we look over a variety of records that, for whatever reason, just didn't end up getting talked about on the Metal Meltdown, at least not in an official video review capacity. And when I was first putting this together, I was kind of thinking, do I even need to do an Albums I Missed January video? Because it kind of feels like I've already talked about all the albums that we need to talk about. I mean, we got a slew of really great, emotionally complex records from Near to Marte, Death White, Gargantua, Kirk Weinstein, his debut solo album of Down and Crowbar fame. We got some ferocious blasts of old school heavy metal brutality via bands such as Hunt and Midnight, a surprisingly super ambitious metal debut from internet pop star Poppy. And while we did stop short of a full review of Immortal by Lorna Shore, we did get the opportunity to piss off a lot of fanboys when the Metal Meltdown made it clear that we will not be listening to Immortal because we don't want to support CJ McCreery, a man who has abused and harassed women all over the continent and is in possession of what would legally be considered child porn. And y'all have been messaging me ever since with proof that CJ is a good guy, telling me that I'm a leftist loser and I don't know what I'm talking about and all women are lying because women lie about sexual assault to make money. I don't know. That argument makes no fucking sense, by the way. Like, seriously, name one fucking woman that made any money off of lying about sexual assault. Name one. Name one. Just name fucking one. It's not that hard. You keep saying that they're all out there, so fucking name one. Name one! You can't, because there aren't any, you fucking idiot! What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Lorna Shore fanbase, you're wasting your time. Go ahead, dislike all my videos, give me free views, I don't fucking care. CJ McCreery is a fucking dirtbag. The Metal Meltdown will not support him in any way whatsoever. Sucks for Lorna Shore. I'm not against them in any way whatsoever. Go listen to their other albums, but fuck Immortal. Sorry that I think holding CJ accountable for his actions is more important than you having some shitty generic deathcore that realistically you're gonna forget about in a couple months anyway. Shame on me. Wow, this video kind of took quite a sharp turn all of a sudden. I apologize for that, but I guess it just proves the point that January has been a lot busier than some people might be willing to give it credit for. But even in the midst of all this, there are still albums that we did not get the chance to talk about, we did not get the chance to listen to, so today, that is what we are going to do. These are all the albums that I missed in January 2020, excluding, of course, Immortal's Lorna Shore, because fuck that. And let's start with Cello by Apocalyptica, released January 10th via Silver Lining Media. This is the band's 9th studio album, and sees a bit of a return to form for the band, as their previous album featured lead singer Frankie Perez. This is an entirely instrumental affair, though, going back to the roots of the sound with some of the refinements that we've seen from the last few years of Apocalyptica. And truthfully, I don't have much to say beyond that. I mean, Apocalyptica, at this point, have a little bit of a shtick, a little bit of a gimmick. You know, they play neoclassical symphonic heavy metal with cellos instead of, like, lead guitars, or instead of electric guitars. And, you know, they play some pretty interesting arrangements. It's still headbanging music. It's still mostly got everything I think metalheads look for, except now it's cellos instead of guitars. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't bored by this album. I was fairly entertained, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But I just don't have much to say beyond that. It's just kind of a, you know, it's one of these albums where you kind of go, it's another one of these albums. You know? Like when Overkill releases a new album, you go, it's a new Overkill album. And if you like the last one, you'll enjoy this one. And that's kind of where Apocalyptica is now. If you liked their previous records, there's no reason why you wouldn't like Cello. This is also pretty much the reason I decided not to do a full-on review. I just really don't have anything to say on the matter, except that, once again, if you liked previous records, no reason why you wouldn't like this one. I guess if I were to review it, maybe I'd give it like a 3 out of 5. Yeah, let's go with that. Next up, a new solo release from Lamb of God guitarist Mark Morton, an acoustic EP by the name of Ether. I've thoroughly enjoyed Mark Morton's. I've so far really enjoyed Mark Morton's solo output. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff in here that doesn't seem far off from his usual Lamb of God outing, but he's also used his solo work as an opportunity to branch out into some other genres, to work with some different singers, some different producers and songwriters, and this EP is no different. In fact, he's taken a completely different stylistic route, going into more acoustic-based pop and rock music, and doing a lot of covers and creating something a lot more soulful, wholesome, dare I say rustic in some aspects. And he's got the opportunity again to work with some really great singers, and I think he works with all these singers really well, particularly Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm on the She Talks to Angels cover. I'm not super huge on the track Love My Enemy. This is where Mark Morton does abandon the acoustic mentality that most of this EP centers on, and he starts to bring out the electric guitars. He's got Howard Jones belting out a big hard rock chorus, you know. It's not terrible, but I don't think it really works with the flow of this EP. It doesn't really fit the theme, the aesthetic that's been established. Overall, I still really enjoyed this. I'd highly recommend this to anyone who's enjoyed Mark Morton's previous solo works, or for that matter, anyone just looking for a nice palate cleanser in the world of metal after listening to some really extreme shit, you know? Next up, 27 Miles Underwater from Higher Power, released January 24th via Roadrunner Records. This is a melodic hardcore band that I've heard a little bit about. Revolver Magazine has been singing their praises as of late. And I actually wanted to review this record. Honestly, the only reason I didn't, it just came down to a matter of timing. A lot of really interesting albums came out on January 24th, and some of them I just felt were maybe a little bit more important, or I just wanted to talk about more. But thankfully, I have this opportunity to talk about Higher Power, because I think it's really cool. It's a really great, moody, kind of metalcore experience. It reminds me a lot of some stuff from Turnstile, with some elements from classic alternative rock. I hear elements from the Deftones. I hear elements from some 90s hardcore in here as well. Some pop-punk influences come into play. I'm less interested in those, but I think we can safely boil that down to me having a very unnatural bias towards pop-punk, one of the few genres of music that I truly do fucking despise. And for the sake of full honesty, I think, objectively speaking, those influences are well mixed. Even if it isn't to my personal liking, there isn't anything, like, truly awful within these moments. That, to be honest, is also why I didn't review this record. I didn't want people to think that I just hated this because I don't like pop-punk. I mean, I like a lot of elements of this record. I just don't like that element, and it's not Higher Power's fault at all. This is not a judgment on them. It's just a sound that I don't like, and that's a me problem. I fully accept that that's a me problem. I'm fine with that. I got it. No one call me on it, because I got it. I would still highly recommend this to anyone who's enjoyed modern hardcore, melodic hardcore, anyone looking for something maybe a little bit different in the genre at this current moment. Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, this album isn't for me, but hey, when it works, it really fucking works. Next up, the Dead and Gone EP from a band by the name of Stabbing Westward, a band I was not immediately familiar with. Following the production of this video, following my discovery of this EP, but upon doing some research, I've learned that they've been kicking around for a while, and they've actually got a little bit of a cult following. They're kind of like the unsung heroes of 90s industrial metal. In fact, their 1998 album, Darkest Days, is even considered a little bit of a classic in some circles. And after listening to that album, I can definitely see that. There's a lot of really cool ideas on there, and I would say, considering the state of industrial metal at that time, it's probably one of the more interesting albums to come out in that realm in that time. So with all this in mind, I was kind of intrigued going into Dead and Gone, especially considering this is their first major release since 2001, but I was surprised to find Dead and Gone was a lot softer and more dance-centric than some of their previous works, or at least the works that I was familiar with. Yeah, like, sure, it's got an industrial heft behind it, it's got some guitars, but it's really got more in common with, like, dance pop music and some techno and, like, club music. Not bad or anything, there is some simple fun to be had in some of these songs, but it did kind of catch me off guard, and I can't help but wonder if maybe this goes against what longtime fans would be expecting. Particularly when you're not really getting a lot of bang for your buck, even if you really enjoy this EP. You've got 3 original songs and 2 remixes, which, to be honest, don't sound much different from the original songs. I don't know, I mean, it's a fine EP to look at if you're into, like, a lot of synth pop and industrial dance music, but honestly, with that in mind, I think there are just more interesting albums and bands you can check out in those categories rather than go for something like this. So yeah, not really sure who to recommend this to. I don't know, I hope that Stabbing Westward diehard fans love it, if there are any of y'all out there. That's all I gotta say on that matter. Next up is Heavy Rock Radio 2 Executing the Classics from Jorn, released January 24th via Frontiers Records. Jorn is hardly the biggest name in the world of heavy metal, but he is most certainly one of the busiest. I mean, in the span of the last 20 years alone, he has released 33 albums, 21 of which are solo albums, by the way. And weirdly, a good chunk of these have also been cover albums. It's something that Jorn is oddly quite passionate about. Like here in 2010, he released an album called Dio, where he covers a bunch of material that Ronnie James Dio did, not just with his solo band, but also with Rainbow and Black Sabbath. And here in 2016, he released the first heavy rock radio album, which features covers from Queen, The Eagles, Journey. There's a Paul Stanley cut on here. There's another Dio cut on here. Another Black Sabbath cut on here. Deep Purple, Iron Maiden. This is clearly something he legitimately loves to do. His dedication and almost stubbornness to making cover albums is honestly on par with 6 Feet Under. Granted, this is objectively better produced. There's nothing quite as terrible as the 6 Feet Under cover albums, but it is the same mentality where it's just like, fuck it, we're just going to play these songs as they're made, and now the singer is going to put his spin on just the vocal aspect. Which for me has made these albums just as pointless, even if they are objectively better than the 6 Feet Under cover albums, because they don't improve or change these songs in any way. Like, what's the point of a cover if you're not going to make something better or different? Like, what is the point? And that's kind of the problem Heavy Rock Radio 2 has immediately off the bat. There is not a single number on this record that is better or different from the original cut. Nothing. Like, yeah, it's louder and it's got more electric guitar, but that's kind of about it. The lyrics are the same, the themes are the same, the melodies are the same, the basic core of the song is the same. I don't know, if you ever listened to Hotel California and thought to yourself, man, this would be better if the guitars were blaring in my face, then I guess you'll love this album, but I just got nothing out of it. Like, nothing. Again, it's not, like, offensive or objectively terrible. It's especially better than the aforementioned 6 Feet Under records, but it's still just kind of as useless and just as pointless. Like, there's no reason to really talk about this album or go out of your way to listen to it unless you are a die-hard Jorn fan. That's really it. Next up is Killection by Lordi, released January 31st, and I didn't like this album. I've never really taken Lordi very seriously. I've never really enjoyed their music. I find them to be kind of lazy. I find them to be kind of gross. They've always struck me as the poorly constructed diet version of a band like Gwar, with none of the self-aware humor or edge. A lot of their lyrics are inherently kind of sexist, which is more obvious than ever before in a post-Me Too world, and they've gotten so lazy on Killection that they've resorted to blatantly ripping off big-name artists like Rob Zombie. Like, seriously, Shake the Baby Silent is so similar to Dragula that if Rob Zombie were made aware of this and wanted to take legal action, he might have a case. I don't think this album is as stupid or sexist as Sexorcism, but that's not really saying a lot. You've still got lyrics like a bee to honey, gotta dip into your fruit jar. You've still got lyrics like, she's got fresh meat up for sale, I'll give your children rabies. The songs, musically speaking, are still just pretty bland, pretty unintuitive, and downright cringeworthy once you start to factor the lyrics. And it somehow gets even worse when you really start to think about the concept and how everything works on this record. I mean, it's supposed to be a fictional compilation record, to quote the band directly, and it has all of these weird radio transmission interludes all throughout the album, one of which includes the band doing imitations of Ozzy Osbourne and Guns N' Roses. It's cheesy, it's dumb, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess if you really seriously turn your brain off and drink a shitload of beer, you could maybe have some fun with this album, but honestly, at this point, I'm more than happy to just write Lordi off. They haven't been impressing me since their literal inception. I highly doubt anything beyond this is going to change my mind, so screw it. This album is dumb, it's lame, it's sloppy, it's kind of offensive, and I'm done with Lordi. Next up, a highly talked about Death Doom record from Konvent entitled Puritan Masochism, the band's debut album. It's been causing a little bit of a storm in the world of underground metal. I've actually gotten quite a few requests to review this, including one from one of the Metal Meltdown's most avid contributors, Mr. Trevor Burns. Hello, Trevor. How are ya? Honestly, the only reason I didn't review this record is the same reason I didn't review the Higher Power record. It was just a matter of time. There were just other albums that I wanted to talk about a little bit more and that I felt needed a little bit more attention. But since we're here, since we now have this opportunity again, I'm going to go ahead and say Puritan Masochism, definitely worth the hype. This is a seriously fantastic slice of death doom. I love the huge brooding sound. I love a lot of the arrangements. I love the musicianship and the performances. I love that we're seeing like an all-female death doom band. That's really cool. I can't really remember the last time something like that was thrown my way. That's inherently awesome. Death doom is not normally a genre I personally care for. I find that sometimes, even at this genre's best, albums just kind of blur together into slow, meandering, guttural slops. But Konvent are, I think, to some extent aware of the issues of the genre, and they've gone out of their way to put their own unique stamp on things, their own unique energy on things. The songs have really great pacing. Everything is edited really well. It's mixed really well. I would even go as far as to say that this is probably one of the best death doom records I've generally listened to in a long, long time. Really liking this thing. Very excited to see where Konvent goes in the future. I think with a little bit more refinement and growth, Konvent could very well become a real threat in the world of underground extreme music. So definitely check this out if you haven't already. Next up, This Way Lies Madness from Bleed to the Sky, released January 13th via Art is War Records. This is the first studio album from this American metalcore band in nearly 13 years, and while I appreciate some of the more extreme aspects on this record, it's clear to me that Bleed the Sky have not been paying much attention to metalcore in the last 13 years, and frankly have not learned a lot about mixing and arranging music in that time. The actual music itself, I think, is fine. There's some cool, eerie melodies on the album. There's some really crippling grooves. There's some solid breakdowns. If you're looking for just a pure mosh fest of a record, this is definitely it. But my issues with this album come down to the sound mix, which is just really bad. There's no other way to put it. I thought I would come up with a better way to put it, but really bad sums it up quite nicely. The drums are just way too goddamn loud on this thing. They overshadow everything. It becomes difficult to really hear a lot of the cool melodies and a lot of the cool guitar parts when you just have just completely consuming the record. And unfortunately, in these moments of pure percussional carnage, everything else just kind of dissolves into noise, and the album becomes a really big, blurry mess. I imagine some people will just kind of look at this and go, whoa, it's so brutal, and enjoy it just for that alone. And if that's the case, no harm. As I said before, if you are just looking for a super mosh-friendly record, this is probably it. But I'm personally looking for something a little bit more professional in my metalcore, personally speaking. And finally, let's finish off with 666 Goats, Carry My Chariot from Bütcher, which is every bit as batshit insane as it sounds. This band is all about pure nonsense and 80s metal extremity. You know, they love King Diamond, they love Merciful Fate, they love Venom, they love Celtic Frost, they love early Metallica and Slayer. They're all about just creating fiery, hellish, nonsensical music, and that's exactly what the album is. Like, this album just constantly throws demonic wails and guitar solos at you. It's totally intentional. It's very self-aware. There's a level of heavy metal respect and mentality on par with Midnight, but with the ridiculousness, I would say, of an artist like Gwar. Obviously, without the shock rock component. Duh. Although, who knows? Maybe they're headed to that territory, too. It's pretty ridiculous, but I digress. I did enjoy this album, but I will say that it's way too over the top for my liking. I find it hard to believe that I will come back to this record. It's just too much. You get all these riffs, all these solos, all these screams, and it just becomes too much. I would much rather listen to the more recent outputs from Hunt and Midnight. They're more consistent, they're more palatable, they're less stupid, objectively speaking, and they're just honestly better written as well. But hey, if you're looking for something absolutely bonkers and batshit crazy, this'll fucking do the job. No argument there. And I actually gotta wrap this up now because we're running out of time on my little camera thing. It is dying as we speak. So that's all. Thank you for watching. If there are any other albums that you feel that I missed, let me know in the comments. Press this button here, subscribe, get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.